Without further ado, if you guys will, welcome Pastor Brent Purvis today.
All right. Thank you, Hunter. I am honored to be here with you today. For those of you that are watching online in different states and different countries, I know we have many subscribers all the way in Australia. I just wanted to introduce who I am. I'm Brent Purvis, so I'm Pastor Bill's middle son, and so probably his favorite and most handsome son that he has. I'm kidding. I know that my brothers watch this as well online, but I just am honored to be here with you today. And as I was driving in, I got to thinking, my father is such a big picture thinker, big picture leader, and I got to thinking, you know what? A couple of years ago, he changed the name of the company from Bill Purvis Leadership to BP Leadership, and I got to thinking, that was pretty big picture thinking because we got two other brothers, BJ and Blake, and so all of his sons. Their names start with B, and so I said, that was pretty bright of him. So anytime he's out of the country or anything like that, he's got some natural fill-ins here at BP Leadership. But in all seriousness, I'm so glad to be here with you today. Honored and humbled to share the stage of what I believe to be one of the greatest leaders that I know. I know that I think differently and react differently because of living in the home of this phenomenal leader. And so I want to talk to you today about five things really quickly today, 5 things that every leader must do. 5 things that every leader must do in order to grow their organization. All of us want to grow, but there's things that we must do in order to do so. And I want to talk about things that we must do because all of us have must in our life. All of us, every one of us have things that we should do and things that we feel like we must do. And if you think about it, there's all kind of things that we should do. There's things, I should lose more weight. I should, work on this relationship better. I should do this. I should do that. But our shoulds never get us anywhere. It's the things that we decide we must do that actually get us somewhere in our life, especially when we talk about growing your organization. But all of us have things that we feel, whether we realize it or not, that we must do, and our must always get done. All of us, I believe, if you think about it, must make as much money as we have to in order to make things survive the way we like to, the way they're comfortable. All of us, our relationships are exactly where they must be in order to stay together. That's why most marriages don't thrive. They just survive because they're doing just enough just to get by. And when one of those partners in that relationship no longer is thriving to make it better, doing what they must feel like they must do to have this thing thriving, one of them gets out of the way and they start saying, look, I'm out of this deal because, hey, this isn't working the way I want it to work. If you think about your income, it's exactly where it must be in order for you to feel comfortable. To prove that to you, let your savings account drop below that number, whatever that must number is in your bank account, and things start to freak out, don't you? You start to wig out. Oh no, life's falling apart or spiraling down. All of us have must in our lives, and it's our must that we feel that we have to do in order to survive and thrive that always gets done. We always find ways to meet these musts. It reminds me of an illustration I've told before about Roger Bannister. You know Roger Bannister. He's the first guy ever to run a mile in under 4 minutes. And before that, for hundreds of years, people had tried, but they had deemed it, physically impossible. Matter of fact, physicians even said that it could not be done, that if the human body ran a mile in under 4 minutes, that they would die. There's no way it would make it. But for one guy, it became his must. He felt he must do it, and he was willing to die for that fact. And so in 1954, Roger Bannister became the first guy to run a mile in under 4 minutes. Now, the interesting thing about this is people tried to do it their entire lives, but for Roger Bannister, he felt he must do this. This was his calling in life. And when he did it, within 3 years, 30 other people broke the 4-minute mile barrier, which is interesting because it tells us we were always capable. We always could do it, but it took one man taking what his should be done or could be done, and he took it and he made it, and he said, I must get this done. What's funny today is you think about there's high school athletes all over the world that break the 4-minute mile every single day. And so it could always be done. One man raised his standards. And that's what I want to talk to you today about, raising your standards and taking the things that we should do and making them become must, where we must do this. And there's 5 things in your company, in your organization, in your position that I believe if you do these 5 things, it will grow your organization. So let's jump right in. The first must that every leader must do in order to grow their organization is they must have what's called a multiplication mindset, a multiplication mindset. The difference between great leaders and average leaders is within their mindset. My father used to teach me all the time. He says, Brent, 90% of the problems that you'll face, 90% of the adversity that you'll face in life, it can be solved with between the ears. The problem is between the ears. And he's talking about your mindset, the way that you see, the way that you think. When you look at mindsets of leaders, generally they fall between two categories. Either a multiplication type mindset, wanting to make things better, wanting to improve, or a maintenance mindset, not wanting to lose what I have or not wanting to lose anything, the position that I've gained. And when you look at that, a maintaining type mindset is very dangerous for us as leaders, because if we have a maintain type mindset, whether you realize it or whether you don't, your decisions subconsciously throughout the entire day are made with this mindset. Not how do I make the product better, not how do I grow the organization, but how do I just maintain what I have? I'm comfortable, I'm happy here. And when you go through your team, your organization, your life, just trying to maintain what you have, you know what you do? You stifle the growth. You stifle what could be, the possibilities in your organization and in your life. And whether you realize or not, every decision that you make either comes down to, am I trying to multiply this and make this better, or am I trying to just maintain? Your mindset determines your approach. If I'm going to go to Atlanta, Georgia today, the first thing I'm going to do is determine my goal, which is to go to Atlanta, Georgia. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find my approach. What's the quickest, fastest, smoothest route to Atlanta, Georgia? Do you know your mindset throughout your organization, throughout the things that you lead? Your mindset determines your approach. And if you go through life with a maintenance type mindset, how do I not lose what I have? How do I not lose any of the leverage, lose any of the status? How do I just hold on to what I got? The problem is your approach to every decision in your life is approached with the approach of how do I just maintain, not multiply. Now, if I'm focused on maintaining, then I'm going to lose growth, aren't I? If I'm focused on just holding what I've got, then I'm not focused on what could be. I believe that having a maintenance type mindset is the number one killer of growth in your organization. I really do. Because as we begin to see, how do I not lose what I've got, our mind shifts from that not to what could it become, how could I do. And as a leader, we ought to be the ones that say, let me have a multiplication type mindset. Think about this. If you have a maintenance mindset in your relationships, then you're saying this is as good as it's going to get. If you have a maintenance type mindset in your physical body, well, then guess what? If you're just trying to maintain, it'll get no better. This is the best it's going to be at this moment. In your organization, the same thing. Try that with your retirement plan. Try to say, you know what? I want to start a retirement plan, and here's my plan that I want to tell my advisor. I'm not necessarily looking at what I can grow, what it could be. I just don't want to lose what I've got. Well, friend, can I tell you, you won't retire real soon if you look at that with a mindset of how do I just maintain what I've got. See, it takes a multiplication type mindset to grow things. That, when you have a multiplication type mindset, you don't ask the question, how do I not lose what I've got? You ask the questions, how can we take what we got and multiply it? How can we take what we got and scale it up? How can we take the product, the people, the event that works, and how can we make this better? You start asking the questions, what are the possibilities? What could it be? And when you have a multiplication type mindset, that is the key to growth in your organization. When you're maintaining, you're saying at best, it's just going to stay where it's at right now. But when you're multiplying, you're then saying, what are the possibilities of what it could do? You know, Jesus once taught this. Jesus, when he was here on earth, he taught about the parables. You remember he taught about the parables where he was the master, and he said, I'm going to give 3 servants 3 different bags of silver. I'm going to give one servant 5 bags of silver, one servant 2 bags of silver, and another one I'm going to give them 1. And it was interesting to see the people, the workers' mindset. Remember the one that he gave 5 bags of silver to? They went out and they multiplied, didn't they? They had a mindset of, what if he's entrusted me, what can I make this be? And they came back and he multiplied. He doubled it, brought back 5 more bags of silver. The same with the middle servant. Brought back 2 bags of silver. When he was given 2, he multiplied it. But you remember the third one? The third one went and dug a hole and he hid it. And when the master came back and said, what'd you do with what I gave you? He said, I know that you're a hard worker. I know that you are one that works hard all the time. And so I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose what you gave me. There's the mindset. I don't want to lose what you gave me. And because of that, you remember that master gave that talent, that bag of silver, to the one that had 5. And he said, what a worthless wicked servant you are. He was saying, what kind of mindset is that? When I give you a talent, when I give you an ability, when I give you finances, it's not so that you can maintain what you have, it's so that you can multiply. So I believe as leaders, as we talk about growing our organization, one of the number one things we can do is have a mindset, not of maintenance, but a mindset of how can I multiply? What are the possibilities of this product? What are the possibilities of these workers who work for me? What are the possibilities of this event that I have? And when we go through life with a multiplication type mindset, that's when things begin to grow. Now, the second thing that I see that every leader must have in order to grow their organization is this. You must know when to rest and when to race. There's a difference. You've got to know when to rest and when to race. If you're redlining all the time, if every time someone talks to you, you say, I'm so busy, I'm just doing this, I'm busy, I had a moment to think, I'm doing this, that's not a badge of honor. We live in a society now that says, that's a badge of honor, I'm a hard worker. No, that's not a badge of honor. That's a big warning flag. Think about your car. If you redline your car everywhere you go, and that red line it's a warning, isn't it? It's a, hey, keep me out of the red unless something blows up. If you run your car all day throughout this week in the red, you're going to break something, aren't you? It's the same way with your leadership. Most leaders are type A. They're hard drivers. Most leaders, if we're honest, we can say we've done this before. We've ran in red so long that we eventually broke, and we had to pull off track. And what I've noticed is when I've done this in my life, it's taken me longer to recover. When I don't take little spots of rest in between the races, it takes me longer to recover. When I'm exhausted, when I break down, it takes a lot longer. You've got to learn to know when to race and when to rest. I used to run Ironman triathlons, and I would do long distance triathlons. It would take 6-7 hours, and then I would do some short distance. And what I found in those races is the mindset and the strategy behind them, they were totally different. In an hour race, here was the deal. You redlined it for 1 hour, and whoever could hold the most pain for an hour generally would win the race. In a 6-7 hour Ironman, though, everything was calculated. You couldn't redline, or you'd be out of the race. Your whole race would be over. You had to calculate how much calories you were burning per hour and make sure you were taking enough calories in. You had to wear a heart rate monitor and make sure you weren't in the red. You were close to the red, as close as you can get, but not in the red unless you burn up your whole race. Everything was calculated. I say that to say in your leadership, do you notice the same thing? If you're redlining all the time, that is not healthy. If you're redlining all the time, something's going to break, and it's going to take a lot longer to get back on track if you blow the thing up. And so you want to learn when to rest and when to race if you're going to grow your organization. I recently read about an article of these sledders that have these dogs, and they sled through this ice-cold territory that is just freezing, and they do it over the course of weeks, which is amazing. I mean, it sounded brutal when I read the article. And what I found interesting is there was 2 races going on with these dogs and these professional sledders. One guy at the end of each day would take his dogs and would take his team, and they would rest. So they started out the same. And at the end of the day, one of them stopped, and they rested that night. Well, on day 2, as you can imagine, a huge gap occurred between the guy who didn't rest and the guy that rested. Well, by the end of day 2, they caught up with the guy that didn't rest. Then they took another rest, and he stopped right when he caught up. And here's what happened again. Big gap, day 3. They make a huge gap. The team that didn't rest continued to plow ahead. On day 3, you see them come all the way back, and they do it again. Every time they gain traction and meet them, they would stop and rest for the night. Now, what's interesting is how this race ended. The race ended on day 4 when the team caught up, rested again, and this team that had not rested started slowing down. Then the team started gaining. Did you know by the end of that week race, the team that rested every night, though it seemed like I don't have time to rest, they're getting ahead, as they did that, they ended up putting a 2-day gap on the team that never rested. It's the same in our life and our leadership. We've got to learn when to rest, when to press hard, and when to race. Jesus modeled this as well when you think about it. Write this down, by the way. You're best when you rest. You're best when you rest. Jesus, when he was on earth, we see him taking all these quick breaks. Jesus was a hard worker. He always woke up before the sun rose, and he would be praying and spending time getting his day together. He was a hard worker. But then we see him randomly pulling off track, taking rest at random time. One time they were in a boat and he was with experienced fishermen. 7 out of the 12 disciples were fishermen. Now, fishermen were not sissies. Fishermen were hardcore guys. They had seen some rough seas before. They had been in some bad conditions. They're in this storm that is so bad that it's creeping out all the fishermen. I mean, it had to be bad. They thought they were going to lose their lives. They look over, and Jesus is snoozing. He is snoring up a storm over here. He had seen that there was a moment in between speaking engagements where he could rest. And he was resting in the midst of a storm. Of course, they wake him up, and he stops and calms the seas. But I say that to say, even Jesus knew you're best when you rest. There's a time to race, and there's a time to rest. And if you're going to grow your organization, you've got to realize there's a time to race, but then there's also a time where I need to rest. Proverbs 23:4 teaches us. This is one of the wisest businessmen ever to live. Richest guy ever on the planet. His name is King Solomon. Here's what he says about resting. Do not wear yourself out trying to get rich. Be wise enough to know when to quit. He said, be wise enough to know when to turn it off. Now, the third thing, if you're going to grow your organization, is this. You must have the ability to hire the right people. You must have the ability to hire the right people. About 15 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, maybe more like 17, I came on, and my dad brought me in to be his right-hand guy. And my dad is an incredible leader, so he had hired all kind of people to keep up with the pace he drives. He's a hard-charging, type A type personality. But my dad's strong suit is not hiring. My dad's biggest thing, one of his greatest assets, is that he believes in people. One of his worst things that he has, one of his worst qualities is that he believes in people. He believes in people a little bit too much sometimes. So he would hire people, but they weren't necessarily the best people. My dad just believes in people. I remember the time that we were talking to this guy about this guy was going to step out, and he didn't really have a great business plan, and he was going to step out into the business world. And I remember I'm standing next to my dad, and he's telling this plan, and I'm thinking, that's not really a good plan, but my dad believes in people. And he asked the question, he said, do you think I should do it? And my dad said, here's he is, he believes in everybody. He says, what do you got to lose? I think you should go for it. What do you got to lose? And I'm sitting here listening to it thinking, everything. How's about your house? How about your car? How about your wife? Horrible plan. But Dad he believes in people. And so when I came on here, he believed in a lot of people, and he hired a lot of people that we maybe shouldn't have hired. And so I had to come on, and I had to hire the right people, and I had to clean up. And matter of fact, how I did this is when he went to Florida on a trip. And when he went to Florida, I saw this as my opportunity to clean things up. He had had a heart attack. He had people around him that just weren't benefiting him, and too many people around him. And so when he went out to Florida, I said, okay, I'm going to have a day where we just clean the slate. So we brought in, I think that day, 12 or 13 people, and I had to let them go. Well, about number 10 in the line, the secretary called him down in Florida. She said, you got to get back. And he said, well, why? He said, you've got to get back because Brent is firing. There won't be no team, no staff left after, you get back in town. So he calls me, and I said, Dad, here's what I'm doing. You got a bunch of deadbeats. Forgive me later. It's better ask for forgiveness than permission sometimes. But I'm cleaning up some of these deadbeats. And I said, listen, if you can give me 2 or 3 more days, I'll have a lot more of them cleaned up as well. But I came in, and what I did is we've turned the organization around by hiring the right people. And I want to give you for just a moment the 3 things that I look for when hiring the right people, okay? The 3 things I look for. They're called the 3 H's. You may have heard me teach these before. The 3 H's when you're talking about hiring the right people, here's they are. They're humility, they've got to be hungry, and they've got to have the right heart. They've got to be humble, hungry, and have the right heart. Those are the 3 things that if you hire people with those 3 attributes, I guarantee you'll have a better team and you'll be equipped to grow. When you look at hiring someone with humility, here's how you know they're humble. If a person has a coachable spirit, they're humble. If they can't be coached, they're not humble. You see, humility is not thinking like low of yourself or less of yourself. Humility is just not thinking of yourself at all. Humility, if a person has the quality of being humble, they're very coachable, they're very teachable. They go through life realizing it's not about me. And can I tell you, when you get a team member that they realize it's not about me, you're going to get a team member that realizes it's about we rather than me. And that's someone who can help grow the organization. Proverbs 9:9, again, Proverbs is written by the King Solomon, richest guy ever. Here's what he says: instruct the wise and they'll become even wiser. Teach the righteous and they'll learn even more. Pick someone who is coachable, who is teachable. If you pick someone who is humble, they've got what we call growth potential. meaning they can go a long way. Now, if you pick someone who's got pride in their life, that's the absolute worst people that you can hire. In the center of the word pride, if you think about it, the center of that word is the letter I. See, proud people, they have their whole life, they go through life with saying, it's about me. It's about what I want to do. It's about what I want to accomplish. And when you get a person with pride in their life, they're not coachable. They're not teachable. And the problem with that is if you're not coachable, you're not teachable, you can grow no further. So hire humble people. The second H also stands for hungry. They got to be a go-getter. They got to get stuff done. If you got a go-getter, you know who they are. You don't have to push them. You don't have to have a manager stand over them. They just get things done. In life, when you think about hiring people, you generally fall within two categories. You've got doers and you've got thinkers. And you need thinkers. But the problem is you also need a lot of doers. Because if you've got an organization just full of people who are thinkers, then you're going to think up a lot of ideas, but none of them are going to get done. So you need doers. You need people who are hungry. Tony Robbins, the expert on the human beings and their emotions and why they do things they do, he said this about hunger. He said, hunger is the most common trait of every successful leader. Make sure that you surround yourself with hungry people who are doers. The third H stands for heart. Do they have the right heart? I've often said I can train for skill, but I cannot train for heart. You've got to find the people that's got the right heart. Your heart in the scriptures, the heart represents your motives. It represents your intent. It represents your thought life. It represents why you do things the way you do. You remember when Israel wanted a king and they had chose their own king, and it was King Saul, and King Saul eventually crashed and burned, and then God said, now I'm going to pick a king. If you need a king, I'm going to pick one. And you remember he sent the prophet Samuel, and Samuel went and he interviewed all of David's brothers, and he said, this has got to be him. They're tall and handsome, good looking. And God said, nope. And he said, well, what about this one? This has got to be him. This looks like king material. Nah, that's not him either. And he went through every brother until finally Samuel said, do you have any more? And they found little David that was out in the field. And when David came in, God told him these words. He said, Samuel, God doesn't see as man sees. You look at appearance. You can look at the outside. God looks at the heart. He looks at the heart. I say that to say when you're hiring people, look for heart. Our organization, that's probably the number one quality that I got. Hard worker, and I've got humility, but heart above all else. Most of the people that we've hired here at the church, they were already in the church before they got a paycheck. Most of them were business owners, and they come equipped, and they're doers, but most of them loved the church before they ever got a paycheck. The reason I did that is I wanted people that already were bought into the mission, that already loved the church. Find people in your organization that have the right heart. You can train skill, but you cannot train for heart. So have those three H's. Now, the fourth thing that every leader must do, again, not should do, but every leader must do in order to grow their organizations is this. Leaders must have the ability to create and implement successful systems. Successful systems. You're going to hire the right people. Sometimes maybe not. But either way, if you've got the right people, you cannot just go on the excellence of the people. You have to have the ability to create systems and put systems in place. If not, you'll outgrow staff. Some staff will be relocated and move. And every time they move, you're starting right back over, trying to find the right person, trying to train the right person. You go right back to the level that you were. If you create systems when that person leaves, the system's still going. You just fill the spot with the next people, and it still moves on. Write this down. Great systems plus great people bring great success. Great systems plus great people bring great success. If you're going to grow your organization, you have to have the ability to create and implement great systems. Recently, I've been studying about business owners, and I found this to be true when we talk about the ability to create systems. There's a big difference between a business owner and a business operator. Now, think about that. Big difference between a business owner and a business operator. A business is an entity that adds value to others at the same level or greater when the owner is not there. Catch that. A business, your business, is an entity that adds value to people greater at the same level than when the owner is there. See, if you're a business owner, you have systems in place where your business still adds value to your customer even when you're not there. Now, if you have to be there in order for your product, your organization, your people to add value, you're not a business owner. What are you? A business operator. Again, it's the mindset. You've got to create systems so that even when you're gone, even when you're sick, even when you're out, that there is a system in place that the organization runs off, that it is still adding value greater than when you're there, or at least at bare minimum at the same level of value when you're not there. Each week in our staff meeting, we look at that. We look at the things that went wrong, look at the things that went right. And one of the questions we always ask is, tell me your system. Have you outgrown your system? And I would encourage you to, when you're creating and implementing systems, create them for what you want to be, not where you are now. Create them for where you want to go. If you're, a youth director and you've got 200 people, well, create a system and bring people in and create this check-in system and the follow-up and all that for 1,000 teenagers. Whatever your business is, scale up that system to where you want to grow into. Then what will happen is the day that you grow into that, the day you have 1,000, or the day your sales are where they want to be, you're not scrambling saying, now what I do is this thing grows. You've already built the system in place in order to sustain that growth. So create systems in your life. As your business grows, so should your systems. Now the fifth and final thing, and I won't stay on this long, you obviously get this because you're tuning in today, is that the leaders must grow. The leader must grow. The growth of the leader determines the growth of your organization, plain and simple. The growth of the organization is, I believe, in direct correlation with the growth of the leader. I believe that the one sustainable, controllable factors in growing your business is, are you growing as the leader? As the leader grows, so does the business. It's the power of Kanai. We've talked about it a little bit, but as leaders, the power of Kanai means constant and never-ending improvement. It means that every day we ought to wake up and we ought to improve and see, how do I make this better? As leaders, that's our job, to walk in and not just blow sunshine and say, this is great and this is great. I'm not saying don't celebrate, but I'm saying primarily as a leader, you ought to walk into your organization, your meetings. You ought to look at your team and say, what could they be? How do we make them better? How do we make the product better? How do we scale it up? That you must be growing in order to do that, because your organization will only grow as high as the leader. Growth is a sign of health, by the way. Think about this. If you had a child and 2 or 3 days went by, 4 days, 5 days, and that child didn't grow, it'd be an indication that something was wrong, wouldn't it? You'd be taking that child back to the doctor and saying, hey, something's wrong. A growing organization reflects a growing leader in that organization. By the way, when you're growing, that's where you'll be most fulfilled. Growth is one of the 6 human needs. Whatever area you're growing most in, and primarily is probably the area that you have the most joy in. If you're really into working out in this season of your life, what brings you the most joy? Working out. If you're really into right now growing your marriage, and it should be that way, where your most joy comes from that. If you're really into growing your business and you're pouring your time into that, whatever area you're growing in generally is the area that you're most fulfilled in, because it's one of our 6 human needs. Now, the 2 factors that contribute to your growth as a leader is clearly the books you read, the podcasts you listen to, and the people that you're around. The stuff you intake and the people you're around directly affect how your organization grows and how you grow personally. So those are the 5 things, and I hope if you enjoyed this today, I hope you could take this, implement this into your organization. But those are the 5 things that every leader, not should do, but every leader must do in order to grow your organization. Thank you so much for allowing me to share with you today. I'm going to pray, and I pray that this will be a blessing to you, and we will see you here at BP Leadership next month. Father, thank you so much for allowing us to come together and study leadership. Lord, we love you with all of our heart and all of our soul. Give us wisdom as we walk through the day. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.